Sarah Martinez never imagined that her steady hands, which once helped her father fix old tractors on their farm in rural Texas, would one day hold a precision rifle worth more than her family's annual income. Growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, she learned to shoot at age 12 when her father took her hunting for the first time. The old bolt-action rifle felt heavy in her young hands, but something about the focused silence before the shot felt natural to her. Her childhood was spent balancing farm chores with school, always excelling in mathematics and physics. Teachers noticed her exceptional ability to calculate distances and angles quickly in her head. During high school, she joined the shooting club and dominated every competition within 100 miles. College scouts noticed her talent, but Sarah had different plans. The morning after graduation, she walked into the local military recruitment office. The recruiter, Sergeant Williams, initially tried to steer her toward administrative roles. Female snipers were rare, and the military was still adjusting to women in combat positions. But Sarah's test scores were extraordinary. Her vision was 2015, better than perfect. Her hand-eye coordination ranked in the top 1%. Most importantly, her psychological evaluation showed the rare combination of patience, focus, and emotional stability required for precision shooting. Basic training proved challenging, but not impossible. While other recruits struggled with the physical demands, Sarah found her farm background had prepared her well. Years of hauling hay bales and working 16-hour days had built the endurance she needed. The weapons training came naturally. Instructors were amazed at how quickly she adapted to different rifle systems. Her first deployment took her to Afghanistan, where she served primarily as a designated marksman with an infantry unit. The mountainous terrain reminded her of hunting trips with her grandfather in Colorado. During her first year, she made 17 confirmed long-range shots, each one protecting fellow soldiers from insurgent threats. Her unit commander, Captain Rodriguez, began requesting her specifically for dangerous missions. The turning point came during a rescue operation in the Kunar province. Intelligence had located 3 American contractors held hostage in a remote compound. The mission required extreme precision because the hostages were being held in the same building as their captors. Sarah spent 3 days studying satellite photos, calculating wind patterns, and planning potential shooting positions. When the extraction team moved in, everything went wrong. The insurgents had more fighters than expected, and the rescue team found themselves pinned down in a valley with limited cover. Radio chatter filled with desperate calls for support. Sarah, positioned on a ridge 800 meters away, could see muzzle flashes from enemy positions, but couldn't get clear shots without risking friendly fire. That's when she spotted movement on the compound's roof. Through her scope, she identified a fighter preparing to fire a rocket-propelled grenade at the trapped rescue team below. The distance was further than she had ever attempted in combat. Environmental conditions were terrible, with shifting winds and heat shimmer distorting her view. But she had seconds to act. The shot connected. The threat was eliminated. The rescue team successfully extracted all 3 hostages without casualties. After the mission, Captain Rodriguez approached Sarah with an unusual request. Military officials had been monitoring her performance, and they wanted her to try out for an elite sniper program. 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself at a classified training facility in Nevada. The program was small, selective, and pushed participants beyond normal military standards. Only 12 candidates had been chosen from thousands of applicants across all service branches. Sarah was one of only 2 women in the group. The instructors were legends in the sniper community. Master Sergeant Johnson had over 200 confirmed kills across 3 deployments. Gunnery Sergeant Peterson held multiple records for long-range accuracy. They immediately made clear that previous accomplishments meant nothing here. Everyone started from zero. Training began with fundamental marksmanship, but at distances most snipers never attempt. Standard military sniper training focuses on targets up to 800 meters. This program started at 1,000 meters and progressed from there. Sarah learned to read wind patterns like a meteorologist, understanding how air pressure changes affect bullet trajectory over extreme distances. The psychological training was equally intense. Instructors created scenarios designed to test mental stability under pressure. Sarah learned meditation techniques to control her breathing and heart rate. She practiced shooting after physical exhaustion, emotional stress, and sleep deprivation. The program wanted to ensure that candidates could perform perfectly when everything around them was chaos. Advanced ballistics became Sarah's specialty. She studied how temperature affects gunpowder burn rates, how humidity changes air density, and how the Coriolis effect influences bullets during long flights. Mathematics that once seemed abstract in high school now had life-and-death applications. Her farm girl intuition for distance and angles, refined by years of education and training, was becoming something extraordinary. 6 months into the program, only 7 candidates remained. Sarah had consistently ranked in the top 3 for accuracy and in the top 5 for all other metrics. Her instructors noted her exceptional ability to remain calm under pressure and her willingness to take calculated risks when situations demanded immediate action. The final test was approaching, and rumors suggested it would involve the longest shots any of them had ever attempted. Sarah spent her free time studying weather patterns and practicing mental calculations. She knew that everything she had learned, from fixing tractors with her father to advanced military tactics, was leading to a moment that would define her career. As she cleaned her rifle that evening, Sarah reflected on the journey that brought her here. The girl who once helped her father sight in hunting rifles was now preparing for something that would push the boundaries of what human beings could achieve with precision firearms. She had no idea that within days she would be handed a rifle capable of hitting targets at distances that seemed impossible, and that her finger would be on the trigger for a shot that would become legendary. The morning briefing took place in a windowless concrete room deep within the Nevada facility. Sarah entered to find Master Sergeant Johnson standing beside a large topographical map marked with red and blue zones. The other 6 remaining candidates sat in metal folding chairs, their faces reflecting the same mixture of anticipation and nervousness Sarah felt. "Today begins your final evaluation," Johnson announced without preamble. "You'll be working with equipment that represents the absolute cutting edge of sniper technology. The rifles you'll be using cost more than most people's houses. The ammunition is custom manufactured to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch." He gestured to the map behind him, which Sarah now realized showed a vast desert training area stretching for miles in every direction. "Your targets will be positioned at distances ranging from 1,500 to 3,000 meters. That's nearly 2 miles at the far end. Most of you have never attempted shots beyond 1,200 meters. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. 3,000 meters was beyond anything she had imagined possible. At that distance, a bullet would be in flight for several seconds, during which wind conditions could change dramatically. The mathematical calculations alone would be staggering. Each of you will be paired with a spotter and given access to the most advanced ballistic computer systems available, Johnson continued. But technology is just a tool. Your success will depend on understanding physics, reading environmental conditions, and maintaining absolute mental discipline under pressure. The first week focused on familiarization with the new equipment. Sarah was introduced to her rifle, a custom-built precision instrument that seemed more like a scientific device than a weapon. Every component had been machined to perfect specifications. The scope alone contained more computing power than early space satellites. Her spotter was Corporal Davidson, a soft-spoken mathematician from MIT who had joined the military specifically to work with advanced ballistic systems. Together, they spent hours learning to operate the integrated systems that could measure wind speed, air pressure, temperature, and humidity in real time. "The bullet drop at 3,000 meters is enormous," Davidson explained as they studied trajectory charts. We're talking about a projectile that rises several feet above the line of sight before falling nearly 100 feet by the time it reaches the target. At that distance, you're not just compensating for bullet drop and wind drift. You have to account for the Earth's rotation. Sarah learned that the Coriolis effect, caused by the planet's rotation, could push a bullet several inches off target during a long flight. Depending on the direction of fire and geographical location, shooters had to aim slightly left or right to compensate for this invisible force. The training target started at 2,000 meters. Sarah's first shot missed by 18 inches, a result that would have been excellent at normal sniper ranges, but felt like a complete failure at this distance. She spent the next 3 days adjusting her technique, learning to read wind indicators scattered across the vast range. Environmental monitoring became crucial. The desert facility provided perfect conditions for extreme long-range shooting, with minimal precipitation and predictable wind patterns. Sarah learned to identify thermal columns rising from sun-heated surfaces and how they affected bullet trajectory. She studied how wind speed varied at different altitudes along the bullet's path. By the end of the second week, Sarah was consistently hitting targets at 2,500 meters. Her accuracy had improved dramatically as she internalized the complex calculations required for extreme distance shooting. Davidson proved to be an exceptional spotter, feeding her precise environmental data and trajectory corrections. The other candidates were progressing at different rates. 2 had already been eliminated after failing to adapt to the extreme distances. The remaining 5 showed varying levels of skill, but Sarah noticed that she and one other candidate, Staff Sergeant Miller, were consistently outperforming the group. "Tomorrow we move to the final test distance," Johnson announced during the third week's briefing. 2,950 meters. At this range, your bullet will be in flight for nearly 4 seconds. A slight miscalculation in any variable wind speed, air pressure, temperature, humidity will result in a complete miss. Sarah spent that evening reviewing everything she had learned. The mathematics were complex, but manageable. Environmental reading required constant attention to subtle details. Most challenging was the mental aspect, maintaining absolute focus and confidence when attempting something at the very edge of possibility. The test would simulate a real-world scenario. Intelligence reports indicated high-value targets meeting at a remote location. The mission required eliminating specific individuals without harming nearby civilians or alerting other hostile forces. Only one shot would be possible before the sniper position would be compromised. "You'll have 1 spotter, 1 rifle, and 1 opportunity," Johnson explained. "The target will be exposed for exactly 30 seconds. Wind conditions will be monitored but subject to change. You must make your own ballistic calculations and execute the shot within the time window." Sarah's target assignment was particularly challenging. Her designated target would appear briefly on a balcony of a mock building positioned exactly 2,150 meters from her shooting position. Surrounding structures contained friendly personnel who could not be endangered. The margin for error was essentially 0. The night before the test, Sarah could barely sleep. She reviewed wind charts, studied topographical maps of the shooting area, and mentally rehearsed the sequence of actions required for success. Davidson had prepared detailed range cards with preliminary calculations, but final adjustments would depend on real-time conditions. At dawn, Sarah and Davidson moved to their assigned position on a ridge overlooking the vast desert training area. Through powerful spotting scopes, the target building appeared impossibly small and distant. Sarah set up her rifle with methodical precision, ensuring that every adjustment was perfect. "Range confirmed at 2,950 meters, Davidson reported quietly into his radio. "Wind conditions currently 5 miles per hour from the southwest, gusting to 8. Air pressure 30.15 inches. Temperature 72 degrees and rising." Sarah settled behind her rifle and began her pre-shot routine. Breathing exercises to lower her heart rate, mental calculations to verify the ballistic computer's solutions, final scope adjustments based on current conditions. Everything she had learned over years of training was focused into this single moment. Through her scope, she could see the target area clearly despite the enormous distance. The building looked like a toy structure, and the balcony where her target would appear seemed impossibly small. She would have to trust completely in her training, her equipment, and her ability to execute under pressure. "Target will be exposed in 60 seconds, came the radio call from range control. "Wind conditions holding steady. All other shooters report ready." Sarah made final adjustments to her scope and settled into her shooting position. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm she had practiced thousands of times. Her heartbeat steadied to the calm pace that indicated complete mental focus. The world around her faded until only the target area existed in her consciousness. 30 seconds, Davidson whispered beside her. Sarah's finger moved to the trigger. Years of training, months of preparation, and a lifetime of developing skills were about to culminate in a single shot that would determine her future. The mathematics were perfect. The equipment was flawless. Environmental conditions were optimal. Everything depended on her ability to execute exactly what she had trained to do. Sarah's world compressed to a single point of focus, nearly 2 miles away. Through her scope, the target building wavered slightly in the heat shimmer rising from the desert floor. Every breath, every heartbeat, every micro movement of her body was controlled and deliberate. Davidson lay motionless beside her, monitoring wind indicators scattered across the vast range. "Target emerging," came the quiet radio call from range control. Through her scope, Sarah watched a figure step onto the distant balcony. At 2,150 meters, the human silhouette appeared smaller than her fingernail. The figure moved with purpose, apparently scanning the surrounding area before positioning himself behind a railing that provided partial concealment. "Wind holding steady at 6 miles per hour southwest," Davidson whispered. "Temperature up 1 degree. No change to ballistic solution." Sarah had already made her calculations. The bullet would climb nearly 40 feet above her line of sight before beginning its long descent. Wind would push it approximately 14 inches to the right during the 4-second flight time. The Earth's rotation would add another 3 inches of drift. She had compensated for all these factors, but at this distance, a 1-degree change in wind direction or a 2-degree change in temperature could mean the difference between success and failure. Her breathing followed the pattern drilled into her through months of training. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out, hold for 4. On the natural respiratory pause after exhalation, her body would be completely still. That was when she would take the shot. 15 seconds remaining in exposure window, range control announced. The pressure was enormous, but Sarah felt the familiar calm that had served her throughout her military career. This shot represented the culmination of everything she had worked toward. Success would earn her a place in an elite unit and missions that could save countless lives. Failure meant returning to conventional assignments and wondering what might have been. Through her scope, she could see the target figure check his watch and begin to turn away from the railing. This was the moment. Sarah's finger moved to the trigger, applying the precise 4.5 pounds of pressure she had practiced thousands of times. The rifle's recoil was substantial but manageable. The custom muzzle brake redirected gases to minimize movement, allowing Sarah to maintain sight picture through the shot. Even so, at this extreme distance, she lost visual contact with the target during the bullet's flight time. 4 seconds stretched into eternity. Sarah knew that her projectile was arcing through the atmosphere at over twice the speed of sound, following a trajectory that had been calculated to within inches. Environmental conditions during those 4 seconds would determine success or failure. "Impact," Davidson called quietly. Through her scope, Sarah could see dust rising from the target area. Range safety officers with high-powered spotting scopes were evaluating the shot's precision. The radio remained silent while officials measured and verified results. Sarah remained in position, controlling her breathing while waiting for confirmation. She had felt the shot break cleanly and knew her follow-through had been perfect. The ballistic calculations had been double-checked. Environmental readings had been accurate. Everything within her control had been executed flawlessly. "Shooter 7, this is range control," came the radio call using Sarah's assigned number. "Stand by for score." The pause seemed endless. Sarah could hear her heartbeat, despite the hearing protection she wore. Davidson remained motionless beside her, also waiting for the results that would determine whether months of intensive training had been successful. "Shooter 7 confirmed hit. Distance, 2,950 meters. Accuracy, center mass. Time, within authorized window. Score, maximum points." Sarah felt a wave of relief and accomplishment wash over her. She had successfully engaged a target at nearly 2 miles distance, demonstrating accuracy that pushed the boundaries of human and technological capability. The shot represented not just personal achievement but validation of training methods and equipment that would save lives in future operations. "Outstanding shot," Davidson whispered as they began securing their equipment. "I've never seen anyone adapt to extreme long-range shooting as quickly as you have." The walk back to the facility gave Sarah time to process what had just occurred. She had joined the military as a young woman from rural Texas with natural shooting ability and strong work ethic. Through years of training and dedication, those raw talents had been refined into something extraordinary. At the debriefing session, Master Sergeant Johnson reviewed each candidate's performance. Of the 7 shooters who had started the final evaluation, only 3 had successfully engaged their targets. Sarah's shot had been the longest successful engagement of the entire program. "Martinez," Johnson said, addressing her directly, "your performance throughout this training has been exemplary. You've demonstrated not just exceptional marksmanship, but the mental toughness and adaptability required for the most challenging assignments." He handed her a folder containing new orders and security clearances. "You're being assigned to a unit that doesn't officially exist. Your missions will involve protecting American interests in situations where conventional forces cannot operate. The skills you've demonstrated here will be essential to that success." Sarah opened the folder to find assignment details that were heavily redacted. The unit designation was unfamiliar, and the reporting location was classified. What was clear was that she would be working with the military's most elite operators on missions of critical national importance. Over the following weeks, Sarah learned more about her new assignment. The unit specialized in operations requiring extreme precision under impossible conditions. Previous missions had included eliminating terrorist leaders from distances that made conventional military snipers impossible, protecting high-value assets during dangerous extractions, and providing overwatch for special operations teams in hostile territory. Her 2,950-meter shot became a training standard for the program. Instructors used video recordings of her technique to teach future candidates about mental discipline and environmental awareness. The specific rifle she had used was retired to a display case, commemorating what officials considered one of the finest examples of precision shooting in military history. Months later, Sarah found herself deployed to a classified location where her skills were desperately needed. Intelligence had located a terrorist leader responsible for planning attacks against American civilians. The target would be exposed for only seconds during a carefully planned meeting, and conventional assault would result in unacceptable civilian casualties. The shot distance was 2,847 meters across an urban environment, complicated by wind patterns, thermal disturbance, and the need for absolute discretion. As Sarah settled behind her rifle, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a farm in Texas to this critical moment. Her training had prepared her for exactly this situation. The mathematical calculations were familiar. Environmental reading techniques were automatic. Most importantly, she possessed the mental discipline to execute under pressure when lives depended on her accuracy. When the shot opportunity presented itself, Sarah was ready. Her bullet found its target with the same precision she had demonstrated during training. The terrorist threat was eliminated without collateral damage, and American lives were saved. Later, when military historians studied the operation, they would note that the successful shot required a combination of factors: advanced technology, exceptional training, perfect environmental conditions, and a shooter with extraordinary natural ability refined through years of dedicated practice. For Sarah, the recognition mattered less than knowing she had used her skills to protect innocent people. The girl who had learned to shoot hunting deer with her father had become one of the military's most capable precision shooters, capable of achieving accuracy that seemed impossible to most people. Her career continued with assignments that remained classified, but her reputation within the special operations community grew. Young shooters studied her techniques, and program instructors used her success as proof that proper training could push human capabilities beyond previously imagined limits. The 2,150-meter shot remained a defining moment, representing not just personal achievement, but the successful integration of human skill, advanced technology, and intensive training. It demonstrated that with proper preparation and mental discipline, individuals could accomplish things that seemed impossible, protecting others through the precise application of deadly force across distances that challenged the very limits of human capability.